Hey there everybody, welcome back for another Sunday look around the gardens. Probably the last one that's going to involve any, significant amount of time outdoors. Everything's pretty much dying off out here, and for the most part the peppers have been transitioned into the dungeon. So yeah, Sundays in the dungeon for far too many months until we get back to, outdoor play. Anywho, let's see what's still growing on out here. I found a few interesting things, but for the most part, kind of a sad year. Life grows on, but let's get looking around. Pulled up those watermelons, and that was kind of interesting. In doing so, I discovered a couple of the carrots from that seed tape apparently did sprout. They're not exactly huge or anything, but I figured I'd wait till today and we'll pull them out, and some interesting sort of whitish carrots, I guess. We'll have those in whatever is dinner tonight. But carrying on, this garden has been basically emptied. Got those early cantaloupes at the end. I wouldn't say that I was overly impressed with these this year, but we did try a couple of them. Looks like these two will probably be coming in today as well. We'll cut them open, see how they do. There was not a whole lot of useful flesh inside there, but what there was, it tasted okay. I just don't think I got my 350s worth out of these early cantaloupes, so I'm not sure that I will buy starts for them again next year. This is that Manitoba variety of tomato. I'm going to cut this, take it downstairs to hang it today, so we'll have a better idea of what its harvest looks like, but seems to be a nicely productive plant. Probably will buy that start again if I see it next year. The pumpkin, one pumpkin from that vine. Almost a half pumpkin from that vine. Not terribly impressed, but it is what it is. A little disappointed that they didn't come out red, but at least I got, something I can carve or shoot at, or one for each, really. The indigo rose tomatoes. Oh, these beautiful things. Gonna clip and flip these today too. There's a happy surprise on the second plant though. In amongst all of these beautiful purple tomatoes, I found a couple that have actually ripened on the vine. So those of you who are interested in seeds for that, I know there were one or two of you. I can't send out too many because there's not too many tomatoes that actually ripened up properly. But if you really want to give them a grow, let me know. We'll start this whole address thing all over again. But yeah, gonna bring this in, clip it and flip it, and like I said, I'll harvest seeds out of those red ones there. Beside it, we have the summertime dwarf gold. I'm not so sure about that dwarf part. Lots of late season production on this. There are a few tomatoes on here. It's really hard to tell with the funky potato kind of leaves on this particular plant. But again, I'm going to clip this today, flip it, hang it downstairs. Once we trim it back, we'll know what's actually on there. For the most part, that's what the pepper gardens look like. Pretty much pillaged. That one, poor little habanero, didn't make the cut. Got a few left back here that didn't quite make the cut. Oh, this eggplant. I'm dying here. I just can't decide if I should bring that in or not. It's already looking pretty hurting, but maybe if I had a full season start, I'd actually get some fruit from it. I don't know. Rummaging around in the vines back here, I did find a few of those little tiny pumpkins that I liked so much for baking last year. Doesn't really look like they're ripening up properly, but I'm leaving them on there for as long as I possibly can, and I'm just gonna hope, because those were delicious. The acorn squash here, kind of interesting. Again, with the late season production, so definitely gonna have to start these at least a couple months sooner. But today, we had a big storm last night, and I was looking out here, and I found a couple that actually formed. So I can show you this year's sad little squash harvest before we go inside. 3 sad little spaghetti squash and those 2 little acorn squash. But, it's better than nothing, and they will taste great, I'm sure. I got a question for everybody about this thing that I'd like maybe some answers in the comments would be great. I'm used to grapes that have been really well established and long-term plants. Those ones we had at the other place were, I'd say 50 if they were a day. And this is the first winter that I've had these. I'm thinking about maybe kind of putting it back there in the long shed for the winter so it doesn't get completely snowed on. And I'm also thinking maybe it should stay out in the elements, and that's what it's going to need. But on the upside, look at these strawberries. 3 out of those 4 plants that I put in here, and this thing is already just packed and still producing some nice looking fruit. Not the pink of the pine berries that I bought, but I don't really care at this point. So productive. Anyway, let's head on inside. I'll take this one with me. Take a look at the studio and down in the dungeon. So coming in brings us to the studio, where we've got this beautiful monster sand dollar pepper. That thing is just going gangbusters. Definitely bushing up a little bit. These little side branches are definitely growing since I snipped it back. Just a couple of places, but got to get this under control a little bit, you know. Loving it though, and it seems to be really enjoying the fan. Seems to be enough to fertilize these flowers and keep getting me fresh peppers, so that's wonderful and exciting. Hiding under its canopy, I need to get this lifted up a little bit still. We've got, this is one of the billy goat peppers, the one that was out front. Not necessarily transplanted, just relocated. Seems to be doing okay with coming back inside. If I look at the ends of the leaves here, this looks like new growth of a slightly different shade of green, so I'm hoping that means it's adapting to the shop light, and it'll do what the sand dollar's done. That would be nice. The other 2 that came up are the weary here, which is looking a little weary, but again, we've got some what appears to be new growth, and we're getting some color on these adorable little peppers, so that's cool. Might just get to try a couple of those. And then beside it here we've got the last one that came in for the studio. This is that ghost pepper from out front. Provided us with those wonderful treats that Shocks and I tasted. And again, we've got lots of examples of a new, different shade of green cropping up on this plant. So I am very hopeful that it is transitioning nicely. Not really losing too many leaves from these, especially compared to the ones downstairs. So that is interesting in and of itself. Yeah, going to be really curious to see how this all plays out over the winter. My strange, bizarre, messy little dungeon. I've got so much going on down here this year though. I'm really excited with the numbers of plants that I have brought in, and I am super hopeful that I'll actually be able to nurse these puppies through the winter. Whether or not they'll be going back outside, well, I haven't decided, but let's take a look at what's here anyway. Start off by taking a look at what I brought in for under that Mars Hydrolite, which I have decided to upgrade and get the slightly larger version of it, because I think I'll be able to use the rest of this table space then. I've got, you know, some junk on here I can clean up, and that would be nice. That would be nice. Right now though, we have the other billy goat, the one I wasn't going to bring in from the garden. I did decide to bring it in anyway. It's just such a beautiful looking plant. It's got great structure, very productive, so that's nice. And then back here, this is the Devil's Heart. I've recently clipped it back just a little bit to try and encourage some fresh growth for under this light. I think you might be detecting a theme here. But I took some of the cuttings from this, and I am trying something ridiculously silly for cloning. Come on, open up. I've got those little tiny cups, so I've got soil in that. I've done the cuts in the bottom like I was doing for the double cup system. Then I've got my canning jars over there. Make kind of a humidome. I have no idea if it's going to work, but as always, I'm hopeful. I did bring in the Nepalese bell, starting to get some color, so that is nice. Obviously still hasn't been transplanted yet, but I am trying to make sure that it's under, in theory, the best light that I've got. Beside the Nepalese bell, we've got another one of those cuttings, and then look at this. This is the weary from the garden that I wasn't going to bring in. Again, we can detect some sort of a theme here. I haven't cut it back yet, and I really need to, but this thing is just so covered in flower starts. I couldn't bear to leave it out there to the winter. I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. So even if I lose 90% of these, I'm still going to get tons of peppers off this thing. And I will need to trim it back, and, you know, hopefully it will grow to meet its environment. These red pots here are the reapers. These have been left to just kind of do their thing, but I'm going to be cutting them soon. I want to prep a couple more little cups, and I'll be trying to take some clones from that. Back there we've got the 7-pot brain strain that was basically dead. Had a little bit of new growth on it, and it is coming out in spades. Desperately needs to be washed off with perhaps some Epsom salt water and a little garlic water, but we'll get to that in time. And in the back there you can see I've got a couple of house plants just hanging out against the wallflowers if you will. Dieffenbachia is looking great though under this light. So it's definitely been a positive transition for anything that was growing under other artificial lights. Yeah, really hoping that getting the double version of this will give me better light for these plants I'm bringing inside and more room to play down here. Then over here under the standard tube fluorescent lights, you can see I've transitioned quite a few plants into that Euro grower hydroponic garden, and for the most part I'm impressed with how well they seem to be doing. The chocolate habanero in the back corner there has quite a few fruit on it that haven't turned off or fallen off or turned brown, I should say. And beside it we have, this is one of the 2 varieties of the ahi pennick that were growing around the rhubarb. It seems to be transitioning well. In front of the chocolate habanero is the other variety of ahi pennick. Again, seems to be transitioning very well. Let's see what else we've got here. Oh, we've got the Chinese 5-color from Dave. I couldn't leave that outside. And I noticed as I was bringing it in, curiously enough, this is the one that got topped out of the 2, and it's got a nicer structure, so it came in. There's something to be said for that then. Beside that is the big sun habanero. Seems to be doing moderately well. I'm not upset about it yet by any means. In front of that we have the Trinidad Congo. Look at that pepper. Makes me a little bit nervous, but it sure is a nice looking pepper. And then beside that we have the Antohi sweet pepper that I decided to save after all. With all of this spice, you know, I'm really hoping that sweet pepper will make it. Speaking of things that sound sweet, we'll move over here. Sugar Rush Red, not necessarily as sweet as the name might suggest. I did bring this in. It's not in the best lit position at the moment, but I'm going to be turning on the shelf lights soon enough here. Nothing has turned red on it yet, but look at those peppers. Some very nice looking peppers. So I'm very hopeful, because that'll make for a couple of Sugar Rush varieties, I believe. Kind of lost track of what I brought in, but not really. Here we have one of the El Oro de Ecuador peppers. This is the one that I brought in, this monster. How could I resist? Starting to get some color variation, but you can't really tell it from the leaves. So I don't know if that's just this plant dying or this pepper ripening, but that does seem to be happening to a couple of them. Forgive the sound of the dehumidifier right beside me here. It says I need to keep those LEDs under 80%, and my basement was, well, getting up over that, so had to plug it in. Got the Jay's Peach Ghost Scorpion here, looking like it's transitioning well. Move the MA Wartrix back over there, and again, it's doing all right. I'm fairly pleased with how the start of my indoor season is coming along. We've got that standard orange habanero there, seems to be doing all right. And then up here, this recent addition is the yellow scorpion that was out front. Didn't get to see any pepper production on it, so I'd really like to see what it can do for me. I'm sure it's going to be a very painful pepper, but they look so, well, let's just say it, they're a sexy looking hot pepper. So I'm really hoping this is going to give me the correct phenotype and I get to play with that. And then garden salsa pepper down there. Looking a little hurting. I think it needs some elevation, bring it a little closer to light, but look at all those peppers. Oh yeah. I've only been growing this variety since I've been out here because I found it in one of the local stores, but yepers, I like it. It's not a super duper hot pepper, but it's very productive and it's great in sauces. So, you know, it's got its place. Which brings us finally to this thing here. Some of you may recall my efforts earlier with the aeroponic cloner. I don't have a lot of space to bring in. I think there's 8 varieties out there that I don't have in yet. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to do some cuttings. I'm going to throw them in here, and hopefully with better light and better water, I will be able to root those peppers and maybe even remember what varieties they are, so that when that new light shows up, I can put them there. Which pretty much wraps things up for this week's look around the garden, studio, dungeons, and all of that fun stuff at all of these peppers. If you're still watching at this point, I gotta say a huge thank you. I really appreciate, well, those of you who actually stick around and watch these videos. And on that note, I'm gonna wrap it up and say, yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will definitely see you next week with what will probably be just a dungeon update. So, yeah. The season's changing and I gotta change with it. Alright, take care everybody.